St0ner Sports Radio Podcast. My co-host with me for the remainder of this football season this year will be the one and only Mr. Cole Murphy. Cole, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and just kind of your sports background a little bit?
Well, I played for about 12 years, actually, just like Little League all the way up through high school football, so be a little bit knowledgeable in it. I mean, I still love being around the game and just talking about it, so about it with that.
Okay, well, so you've got some background as far as like being, within locker rooms and kind of the way, prepping for, the next step of college football and stuff like that. You've been a part of that process. It didn't really complete for you, but you've been a part of it, so you've kind of got that insight of kind of just how that all kind of operates, and I think that kind of adds an element into it. So really the big thing to jump into, first of all, is just 10 days away, right? I mean, we're sitting here August 27th, kickoff. Not a lot of great games. We kind of know how that goes. It kind of takes a couple weeks to build, but at least we'll be seeing college football on TV in literally 10 days. So I know that when this drops, it'll be more like 8 days. But I mean, the thing is we're still just over a week away. So that just kind of gets me excited just a little bit.
Yeah. The first 3 games, are always not the funnest to watch, most fun to watch, but it'll be fun. Should be a good season.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, there's a lot of animosity and a lot to get into. We're going to hit a little bit of the top 25. We're going to obviously talk a little bit about more local stuff like Cale Gundy and just kind of how, that whole situation in Norman's kind of unfolded and kind of where we think that the program's headed this season, kind of the overall Big 12 outlook. And then we'll touch a little bit just on OKC Thunder and kind of the draft and kind of where they could be sitting at the end of the year, and if this is going to be another tank year, then do we need to just mentally prep ourselves to open our heads, take our brains out, and just, not really talk about it? Or are we going to actually see a team that could slip into that play-in game kind of area and maybe give the fans a little more something to care about?
That's what we hope for as OKC fans, but who knows? Seems like we're going to be rebuilding for at least the next year, so see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely looks like the rebuilding process is going to be something that is heavily talked about in the coming months when we hit on the Oklahoma City Thunder. So let's kind of jump into some of these games that are going to be going on here in a couple days. You've got only 2 that really kind of stand out to me, and it's Nebraska, Northwestern, and then Wyoming and Illinois. You could throw Vandy and Hawaii in there, but I mean, 10:30 at night kickoff. I mean, you're going to be up till midnight, binging college football and not the best quality. So, I mean, I get why they threw that in there. But you said it best. You said this is kind of probably just Vanderbilt's glorified vacation.
Right. Should be a good year for them, hopefully. Not in the SEC, but they can get back soon at least.
At least a bowl game, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you would like to see at least the Commodores do something. It may be a little bit more of a struggle than people believe for them in the SEC, considering kind of the way that the top 25 thinks it's going to shake out.
Yeah.
But as far as overall indications of where that opening night is going to be, you're only looking at 2 games that really kind of tickle anybody's fancy, and that's the Wyoming and Illinois game and Nebraska and Northwestern.
Yeah.
Obviously, with Nebraska, Casey Thompson, right?
Right.
That's kind of the big story is, former Texas quarterback going over there to Lincoln and trying to help Scott Frost keep his job because he's definitely struggling. Right. And it's no surprise to anybody that a lot of fans are thinking this is probably the last year he has to kind of prove to the athletic department that he's the guy. What are your thoughts on opening night?
At least for Nebraska, Illinois, it should be a good one. I mean, I feel like Nebraska is definitely going to pull out the win for sure. I feel like their offense is going to be really explosive and powerful. Put up a lot of points there. Not really sure about their defense, but hopefully we'll see. It should be a good game.
Yeah, and Northwestern on the other side of that ball, I mean, they've kind of been one of those teams that can surprise you in the Big Ten and be kind of that middle of the pack where you don't really expect them to be. Right. Their head coach does a great job of putting players that are 2-3-star guys and maybe some 4-star guys in positions to kind of make them more than what people thought they would be coming out of high school. And I think that's kind of been just Northwestern's mantra since, those Trevor Siemian days where they were actually, winning double-digit games, Right. So it's been a minute for Northwestern, but I think you're right. I think Nebraska takes this one, and I think Casey Thompson looks good. I think the offense, like you said, will look pretty decent. And you're right, the defense is the question there. It's whether or not Nebraska can stop anybody. And if they can't, then I mean you're looking at a very unfortunate situation for Nebraska being in the Big Ten with teams that can score the football.
Right.
The other game, Wyoming and Illinois, it's just evenly matched teams, right? There's not really an excitement factor as far as like, oh, Illinois is supposed to be really good, or Wyoming is going to be the best in the Mountain West. Like, there's none of that going on. It's just two teams that I think will have a game where you'll be sitting there in the fourth quarter going, whoever's got the ball last is going to be winning this one. So it'll be entertaining to that point. Probably not. You're probably looking at a low-scoring game here, maybe like 24-28, something like that. I don't think any of these offenses are going to be really exploding points on opening night. But that's what we got in 10 days. It's not a lot. There's more games, but there's just not a lot of games on that schedule on TV that are going to really make you want to be like, yeah, I'm going to sit here on this Saturday and really soak it in.
Right.
So I don't know how you feel about that.
Definitely ready to get past the preseason games and onto the actual season. So
yeah, non-conference always kind of a snoozer. I mean, you got a couple games in the first week of September that are good, but it's like that's still the week after, so it kind of feels premature to be like pumping those games up a little bit.
Right.
But let's talk about it. I mean, top 25 gets released. A lot of animosity, a lot of problems for you. You didn't like it. You didn't like it. Name some of the things that you didn't like about this list.
And there's a lot. I'll get into a couple. Definitely with Ohio State jumping to number 2, I feel like a little bit disrespect towards Georgia, just a little bit with them just not winning the national championship. Even if they did have some guys leave, I still feel like with them winning that national championship, I feel like they should have at least been 2, not 3. Still, further in the rankings, had OU 9 and a little bit of disrespect to Arkansas. I feel like 2 at 19, I think it was. I feel like saw some teams, NC State, jump above them. I feel like overall team-wise, I feel like Arkansas should have been down there a little bit. And OU maybe down a little bit too, even though they did have that tough loss last year. But not too bad, but I would have ranked it a little better.
Yeah, I think that you're kind of spot on with some of the complaints and some of the surprises. I mean, you were surprised that NC State got the love it did at 13. You're like, where is this coming from?
Right.
And people have said Devin Leary, their quarterback, looks like, someone that coming off of last season could really be maybe the most productive quarterback in the ACC, which is saying something. But at the same time, look at who they have at number 4. It's Clemson. Yeah. And to me, I have a problem with that because I'm like, Clemson's not that great, right? I mean, especially after last year. I mean, we were promised a Clemson that we didn't get.
Right.
DJ was not playing quarterback the way that the Dr. Pepper commercial would have you believe he was playing quarterback. He kind of being a bum ass, when you get pulled halfway through the season, it's never a good sign for you, especially when you've got NIL deals lined up, especially when you're supposed to be that guy, and there's been kind of that transition from Trevor Lawrence is gone. This is your team now, and people had a lot of faith that he was like the guy, but obviously ended up not being the case. And Clemson ends up finishing the year in the lower teens, as the season ends. I mean, it wasn't a terrible season, but compared to where they've been, which is the college football playoff conversation, it was nowhere near it.
Right.
And so how can you have them at number 4? What's so great about Clemson? Is it the defense? Is it the defensive line? Because we know defense wins championships, but when you can't score the football and you're turning it over, you're not really helping your defense by having them out there for a majority of the game.
Right. I feel like with at least Clemson being 4, it's more like past Clemson they're looking at. Not really the last year, just really more like past Clemson. Of course, with their head coach being as good as he is, setting the team up like he does, they might have been just an off year. I feel like where they got the favorite at 4, but definitely not how I like to see it. I would have ranked it completely differently.
I mean, we kind of went over a little bit of this stuff, and when we're talking about where we would have had teams, what kind of ended up being, your bottom 5 of your top 10? Because that was kind of where things kind of dropped off. I feel like you and I were pretty in sync about, Alabama's probably at the top. Right. I mean, even though they lost last season, still at the top, especially when you have a coach like Nick Saban saying, that was a rebuilding year. Yeah. Because that's just a slap in the face to any analyst or expert that's like, anything about football, right? Yeah. Because you're just like, you're saying, we were the second best team in the country, but F that. Like, we were better. We're going to be better than that this year.
Right.
And people were like, well, you were really close last year, so what does that mean? That they're going to win the national championship by 20 no matter who they play? That's kind of the mentality I got from those statements from him. We're like, yeah, we're going to be running away with every single game this season. And then these rankings drop, and it's like, okay, you've got Georgia at 3, and like you said, you would have liked to see them at 2 at least. I mean, and that's no bash to Ohio State. They're a good team. Yeah. But you saw what happened last season against Oregon in that early season game. They lost. Yeah. And, it wasn't expected for them to lose. And my Ducks are definitely not world beaters. Like, I'm the first one to tell you that being ranked as low as they're ranked this season, completely fine with it. Don't have a problem with it.
Right.
Doesn't bother me because I know that we're probably the second or third best team in the Pac-12. Right. No doubt. We're not going to be sitting there at the end of the year unless something crazy happens saying, could we squeak into that 4 spot? I just don't see that happening as much as I would love it to. And sure, that Georgia game on September 3rd I have circled, but I still think that for the most part, the rankings weren't too egregious. They were just kind of surprising with, the fact that Arkansas is so low, like you said, because they've got a good quarterback still. The Razorbacks have an offense that's going to be really hard to stop. Definitely. So I think that when you talk about how they're in like the 19-20 range in a lot of these preseason rankings, I think that it kind of leads you to believe that Texas A&M is going to be really, really good, or that Georgia is going to be really, really good. But guess who's not on this list? Florida. Guess who's not on this list? Ole Miss is in the low 20s. Yeah. I mean, is Jackson Dart really that good? We don't really know. I mean, we don't know anything about how good Ole Miss is going to be. So I don't have a problem with Arkansas being ranked above them, but I do have a problem with Arkansas being ranked as low as they are, considering that the other teams in front of them don't seem to really have as hard of a conference to be in or as tough of a schedule. But I think that's kind of the point, right? Because you're anticipating that, they're going to lose some games because it's the SEC. Right.
With them having the year they had last year in the SEC and the beginning of the season they did have, I feel like they should have at least been either not top 10, but just outside of it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good analysis in that 10 to 15 range, like something like that. Yeah, I mean, and the thing is it wouldn't be so crazy if the rankings weren't what they are. Right. And I think that's kind of part of it. You have Oklahoma State ranked in the top 15. You've got them sitting at 11. You've got Baylor hanging around there as well. And you've got OU at 9 and 7, respectively, in 2 different websites' top 10s. Right. Do you think that OU deserves to be in the top 10 right now, considering where they're at?
Considering with the other teams that are in the top 25, I feel like yes. OU, of course, has always been on top of the Big 12 and winning. So, their new head coach, Brent Venables, I feel like new quarterback coming, Dylan Gabriel, I feel like it's going to be a big time explosive offense. And on top of that, I feel like the defense is going to be great as well. So I feel like them being right where they're at was a decent ranking, but we'll see. Hopefully the Sooners have a good year.
Yeah, they've got a lot of things to kind of fix. I mean, as far as holes to fill, I mean, obviously you said it, best quarterback position, obviously big shoes to fill. A lot of guys on defense having to plug in and play. But overall, not a lot of drop-off. You had 7 returning starters on offense and 8 on defense. So, like you said, the defense should be better than last season, which was still not terrible considering where it was under Mike Stoops and that kind of, area of why are we playing 6 yards off the ball on third and 2. Yeah. I mean, it's, that's, we're far away from that enough to where I can say that there should be marginal increase in how they play from last year to this year. How do you feel about the situation with Cale Gundy leaving? Because we have to talk about this, even though it's really not. I mean, it could be considered not our place. Yeah. But at the same time, I think we've got to dive into it. Yeah, I don't think that there is any room for excuse anymore as far as not talking about it. It's been over a week. So we've kind of let this marinate a little bit, and as this has gone on longer, we've learned more, and that's kind of the big thing is we know more than we did yesterday. We know more than we will, in the coming days. So as far as the way this looks, it doesn't look good. Yeah. And I'm not, not super excited about talking about this, but at the same time, as you said, needs to be talked about.
Him being a part of the Sooners, as long as he's been a part of the Sooners, and of course with their offense, it's going to be hard to, with this close to the season, hard to be replacing him. And with as much knowledge and the skill he's had at his job, it's going to be hard to line up another guy to take over his place. But I don't know. I don't know exactly what happened that day, but from the report that came out, I mean, I feel like he did the right thing, but for recruiting purposes in the future, but hard to talk about, I mean, I definitely don't think he should have said what he said. It was definitely wrong, and I think it was good for the program that he did step away. But I feel like at the same time, he could have stayed if he wanted to stay. I feel like that was more a personal decision on his part for him to get out of there for University of Oklahoma.
Yeah, and if you have been living under a rock and you don't know what we're talking about, so according to multiple reports inside the program, what happened was a player was not paying attention during a film study meeting. The player was typing on their iPad. Cale Gundy takes the iPad, looks at what the player has written, and not only just like reads out what it says, but reads out what it says multiple times. And apparently within these sentences, within, what the player was typing was, a racial slur. And, unfortunately for Cale, you're working in an environment where you're mainly surrounded by black athletes.
Right.
And if you're going to be saying stuff like that as a middle-aged white cis male, you're probably going to get canned.
Right.
And I was talking about this the other day with you. I said, my friend worked at McDonald's and thought he had the pass with one of his, coworkers.
Right.
Used it in a sentence, coworker calls corporate, gets him canned. I mean, it doesn't matter what job you have.
Right.
If you do this, 9 times out of 10, you're losing your job.
Definitely.
And so I get why people are upset, right? Because it's like, well, what if the players want him to still be there that are currently there?
Yeah.
What if the coaching staff doesn't have a problem with it? What if everybody realizes, it's just a mistake, But me and you both know that if I'm reading something and I'm looking at it, I have to make the decision whether or not to say that aloud. I mean, you can read it in your head, and you can say, I'm not going to read that and give it back to the player and, discipline him whatever way you were going to discipline him.
Yeah.
I don't think that it was necessary for him to do what he did in order to get his point across in that situation.
Yeah.
And like you said, he made the right decision. I think that he knew that, like you said, for recruiting purposes and the fact that you're recruiting young black men in this country for a majority of the positions you're looking at, you're definitely going to have problems if you were to keep him. I don't want to go to your school because you have a racist on your coaching staff. I don't want to go to your school because your school tolerates racism in the locker room in a closed environment.
Right.
It's one of those things where, people may be saying, oh, look at these 2 woke white kids, talking about this as if they actually know what's going on. Like, we don't know how that makes a person feel. We don't know how anybody in that room was feeling personally.
Right.
And so is it, our place to really say what should happen to him? No. But when you make a mistake as egregious as he did, I think you have to admit that it's time to go.
Definitely.
Whether or not you feel like, oh, this is a sissified, oh, look how pussy people are for, being upset because I just said a racial slur twice or 3 times or however many times it was more than once.
Yeah.
Now, Deadspin did get in a little bit of trouble by reporting that it was an iPad that belonged to Drake Stoops that had the word on it. And a lot of people were upset because there was no way that Deadspin could have figured that out. There's no one's leaking that information, so technically just spewing misinformation and trying to paint this narrative of if you don't know, two white people, being involved in saying something that they should never really say in any way, shape, or form in any situation.
Definitely.
So I don't know if Deadspin retracted their statement. I don't know if they believe it to be true.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that it was his iPad, and I don't believe anybody knows whose it was because, and the thing is people were like, why isn't the player getting disciplined?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it just depends. Like, like we said, he didn't have to say that.
Yeah.
He didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
He could have just been like looking at it and been like, okay, and giving it back to him, and then like disciplined him later. Go make him run stadium steps. Whatever you were gonna do.
Right.
Like, why do you have to say it? Like, you're just so comfortable. Like, and that begs the question: were you saying it before then around these players in a comfortable context? Were you out there during practice when they're blaring these songs over the speakers that are obviously probably not uncensored during practice and sitting there singing the lyrics with the players? Like, I mean, not that we don't know that white people do this, because they do, but that doesn't mean it's right, and that doesn't mean we should normalize it as something that's like, oh, okay, socially acceptable. Like, let's go ahead and just let every single white person say it if it's a song lyric. Like, I mean, like, excuse me, like, that's not okay. Like, it's. And then it begs the question, well, then is the music even made for us? It's made for everybody, but you just have to know there's certain lines you can't cross when it comes to this stuff. And I think for the most part, people are respectful of those boundaries, but it doesn't mean that there are people out there that aren't. And as far as I'm concerned, from the picture that's painted here, Cale Gundy is one of those guys that at least from his actions taken seems to care about the weight of what he said, because if he didn't, he wouldn't have left. Yeah. But at the same time, do you think someone's twisting his arms here and saying you gotta leave?
No. I mean, I feel like what you're saying earlier with him, I feel like he, with being as long as he's been around the program, I feel like he got comfortable there and more treated the guys more like they were his sons or whatever. So he didn't really, I don't feel like he is that guy that would really just say that. I don't think he is a racist. Like, he did get comfortable there and got more mad and was in the moment and just kind of said it, but also it's definitely not right, and I felt like the best thing he could do for himself and leave.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue for him staying, right? I mean, like you said, he might not be a racist, but it's one of those things where it's like, at least if that's how everyone's gonna see it, and especially people from the outside that don't know you. Right. Like, because a bunch of Oklahomans and a bunch of former players and a bunch of people that know you are like, oh, he's a great guy, doesn't excuse you from the negativity of saying something like that. Right. Like, he could be a great guy in 99.9% of social situations. Yeah. But you make that one mistake, and the mob is gonna label you as a racist. And there's no way of really escaping or excusing what you did in a way where you're not gonna sound racist anyways. Yeah. Like, oh, I just said it because I was comfortable. Oh, I just said it because these young black men around me are like my family, I have that privilege, that's one of those, words you can throw in there is, I have the privilege of being an authoritarian figure in these guys' lives, and I feel like I should be able to say it. Like, I mean, there's no excuse that you can put out there that's going to be like, that makes sense to me. Like, you can say it's a mistake. Yeah.
Race definitely plays the factor into all this. Of course, if it were a black coach, I felt it wouldn't have been a big deal, and it would have just been another day there. But being a white coach, of course, and no matter the circumstances there, he didn't have the right to say it, and he knew that, and he knew that he definitely made a huge mistake, so got out of there. So
yeah, and I do think that the point is he did the best thing for the program. It might not have been the right thing in the eyes of multiple people in this country. Like, they're like, oh, that's ridiculous. It might be ridiculous to you, but he understood how it would reflect on everything, and how this would just snowball into this big giant mess. And he did the right thing by not only getting it out of the way so it's not a distraction, but getting it out of the way because if you don't, then, as you said, it's just going to deter recruits, and your program falls apart, and there's no reason why one guy should stand between you and success if everybody else is doing it the right way.
Especially with them moving to the SEC within a couple of years, it's going to be a big factor, of course, with it.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's really all we can say about it. Is it's done, it's over with. Yeah. They have a new interim wide receiver coach that's doing a good job. Does this affect how they play the rest of the year? Probably not. Another theory is, do you think Mike Gundy goes out and hires his brother? I mean, not because it looks good optically, but because he's family.
Yeah. It's a good topic for sure. I don't think he does specifically for the circumstances that happen to OU, but he could end up being a part of the program somehow, maybe being athletic trainer or whatever the case may be, but I don't see him on the coaching staff.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about this top 25, right? So you have Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and Clemson as your top four. Obviously, we talked about Clemson Notre Dame's at number 5, followed by Texas A&M at number 6.
Yeah.
And like I was saying, you have OU, Baylor, and Oklahoma State within 4 rankings of each other. 9 OU, 10 Baylor, 12 OSU, and 11 my Ducks. So, and then right behind them is, surprise, number 13 NC State, and then right behind them is the Trojans of USC at 14.
Right.
So you have these teams, right? And if you want to look at Arkansas, they're at 19, like you said. They've got Wisconsin, Pitt, Miami, and Michigan State above them, right?
Yeah.
And I think you and I both agree that I think on any given week, Arkansas is beating every single one of those teams.
Definitely.
Michigan State, I don't think they're that good. Are they the second best team in the Big Ten? Maybe. But as far as this list is concerned from the AP, not great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you're dropping 6 spots from where you were at the end of last season, which was a top 10 team. Yeah. But I don't think that they've got enough talent to compete with Ohio State or Michigan, really.
Right.
And Michigan's still a question mark for me. Who's going to be your quarterback? Is it going to be McCarthy? Is it going to be McNamara? Who's it going to be?
Yeah.
I mean, they still haven't figured that out. I think the biggest shock to me, to be honest, and this kind of came as one that I understood. Texas not on the list.
Yeah.
And for a long time in the off season from last January, or this January, I guess you should say, from the national championship this year to now, there's been multiple preseason rankings from other websites that have had them as high as number 5.
Wow.
And so, what's the deal with Texas? Do we think that Texas is getting snuffed here? Do you think this is on brand for where it should be?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course, Texas, for at least the past couple of years, I feel like their rankings on par. I feel like they haven't been getting it done, haven't been winning games, and they've been going 500 at least for if the games they have won. They've had great teams in the past, but they just haven't been getting it done. So I feel like they're probably teams they are better in that they would beat there in the 25 right now, but just with Texas always falling off and getting that ranking in the top 25 and always falling out of it, I feel like they're exactly where they need to be for this.
Yeah, I mean,
so they can prove otherwise.
Yeah, because you look at the Charlie Strong years and you look at Tom Herman, and it just wasn't. It was mid, right?
Yeah.
Like it was literally
Always.
mid. It was mid shelf. It was you'd smoke it, but it'd be it's like you could do better. I mean, it's still gonna be high, but it's not gonna it's not gonna do the job the way other products could do the job.
Right.
And so when you look at teams like I said, like BYU, Houston, Cincinnati, Wake Forest, with the loss of their starting quarterback for what seems to be the remainder of the season.
I like BYU in there.
BYU is one of those teams that was actually ranked a lot higher in a lot of the previous preseason rankings that ESPN was like the way too early where you don't really know anything.
Right.
They were up there, and I don't think that's wrong, but the thing is I think they're going to climb regardless, because I think these teams at the bottom, your Wisconsins, your Kentuckys, Ole Miss, Cincinnati, I think they will drop out early.
Definitely.
Cincinnati, too many question marks. Everybody's gone. And you had a playoff team last year. You don't have one this year.
Right.
So where are you going to be? Texas, who's going to be the quarterback? Yours, Card.
That's a good question.
I mean, if the quarterback race is as close as he says it is.
Right. It should probably be yours. They're going to give him a start, but with Card being around for the couple seasons he's had, they might throw him in there for the first game.
I agree. Anything else you want to hit on here? We have Oklahoma City Thunder stuff, obviously surrounding us everywhere in this room.
Yeah,
is Oklahoma City Thunder stuff. We gotta get that out of the way. We are already halfway through here, so we are already getting to the good stuff here. The Thunder, great draft, right?
Yeah.
I mean, no really complaints. 2 Jalen's and a Chet.
Right.
You weren't really high on Chet Holmgren going into the draft.
Yeah.
Are you more comfortable with the pick now?
Yeah, I like seeing it now just from seeing him. I mean, I was kind of unsure with him at Gonzaga, I guess. I didn't really know much about him. I did see him play and did see his highlights, but I wasn't really knew the guy like I do now. I feel like I see him in a couple of the preseason games and the summer league games or whatever. I feel like he's doing a good job. I just wish he'd put on some more size, of course, but that also comes from him, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, lots of questions, lots of unknowns for Oklahoma City, but they've got a good core. If you got Chet, you got SGA, and you got Giddey.
Yeah.
You've got these other young cats coming in that are going to probably produce right off the bat, you would assume.
Right.
But the question remains, are we going to tank for that French guy?
Yeah.
Or are we going to just kind of play to the best of our abilities and possibly be like a play-in team?
Yeah.
Do you think there's play-in potential here? Because I kind of do.
I feel like I gotta see how their chemistry goes, of course, but that's gonna, of course, within the first 25 games, we'll see that. But I feel like we do have a good team, enough to definitely get in the play-in game for sure. I'm not sure if we're gonna tank, but I guess we'll see as the season goes.
Yeah, I think that's the big question is if what happens if like we get on a roll, right? Like what happens if good things happen and we're sitting there at 15 wins, 15-10 for the first 25 games. Do you decide to sit Chet for the next 7 games just to see how it goes and to kind of keep that tanking alive, or do you say, well, if we win the next 7 games and we're sitting there at 22-10, looking pretty good, probably top half of the Western Conference at least in record. I mean, I think that's going to be the deciding factor is where are we at 25 games? Like that's a good analysis by you. I think once you get to that 25 game mark, you'll kind of know what direction Sam Presti and this organization wants to go. Definitely. Because as far as most local people around the Oklahoma City area, they're like, yeah, this is Tankathon 2.0. Like this is we're going to the fucking bottom. Like it's not going to be we're going to be contending for that 4th or 5th seed. Like, no, we're going to be lucky if we get a seed at all because they're expecting Chet to play like maybe half the year.
Right.
And I just don't see the value in that because with such a young guy and a player of Chet's, physical attributes and just kind of what he brings to the table, I feel like the more exposure he gets, the better. So I think, kind of reeling him in and putting him on a tight leash is not really a good thing. Right. I mean, I feel like he kind of needs more, experience to kind of ready his legacy along if he's going to be a successful player at all.
Right. It's hard being a rookie, coming in the league, of course, with all the greats that we even have still today. I still feel like we are going to need a superstar in Oklahoma City to be a factor, to be a name. I mean, I'm not saying that you need one to win, but I feel like nowadays, with all the talent in the league, we need at least one superstar in chemistry. Just like how, at least Giannis took Milwaukee 2020 championship and won. He was the guy, and he didn't really have a lot of great talent around him. He did have a few good players, but I feel like if we're going to be like that in OKC, bring a championship to Oklahoma City, we need to add that.
Yeah, there's definitely things that we need that we're not exactly getting.
Yeah.
I think that when it comes to what Oklahoma City's got on the roster right now, you're probably right. We're probably one other really good generational player away from being great. I think that if that's what it comes to, and it's just another Tankathon season and we're looking for the French guy, we're looking for the French guy.
Right.
I don't think there's a wrong thing about that. But it's just less fun to watch when a team's trying to kind of lose without like trying to expose the fact they're trying to lose.
Right.
So we'll see. A lot of questions. We still have got like a month away from really the start of the NBA, but we just kind of wanted to touch on it because it's local, it's here. It's a story, it's something.
Definitely.
The draft in general was pretty decent. Yeah. I don't really have much really to add to the conversation other than I'm just ready for the games to start so we can actually start talking about whether or not some of these teams that have acquired some of these big names are going to be, continuing to support the narrative that, that's their guy for the next, 5 to 6 years.
Definitely.
So we'll see kind of how that kind of pans out. Let's talk a little bit about just kind of what you think as far as what's fair in the Big 12. Because right now people have said the top 3 teams are Baylor, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
Like those are their top 3. Not in any particular order. Yeah. It could be any 3 of them at the end of the year playing for that Big 12 championship.
Definitely.
Do you think that there's any teams that are being left out of that conversation currently right now?
A little early to tell on that. I feel like I will see within the first 5 games kind of if there's anybody else that's going to make some noise. But I feel like for right now, as it sits, past previous season, I feel like 12. And they got the names that are, of course, going to be at the top with Baylor, OU. I feel like those 3 are going to be at the top, and we
So what teams, if you had to bet though, do you think could have a shot of being that second team in there?
I mean, I was gonna say Iowa State, but they did just lose a lot of their guys. They did have that really solid team at least last year. I think those guys were all seniors, so I was gonna throw Iowa State in there, but maybe TCU. Like they might make some noise.
Yeah, you've got Chad Morris down there that was playing at OU.
Yeah.
And was, a third string guy, transferred and ended up being the guy at the end of the season last year.
Right.
They're definitely someone that people have picked at the bottom of the Big 12. But like you said, they've got the tools there to do that. And Gary Patterson's kind of taken the Mike Gundy approach in the last year of got these guys that aren't exactly 4 or 5 star guys, but I can build them up over the course of 2 or 3 years and make them into people that you wouldn't want to face any Saturday of the week.
Right.
And you're not just going to walk over them.
Yeah.
So I like that pick. For me personally, I like Kansas State a lot.
State, yeah.
But a lot of people do, and that scares me.
Yeah.
So, because when I like something and then other people like it, and I'm like, I fucking hate that. Because it's like, then there's that pressure of like, is it everyone just jumping on this because it looks that good?
Right.
But it does. You have Adrian Martinez coming to a system that has been helpful to players like Colin Klein, has been helpful to players like Skylar Thompson.
Right.
I mean, and those players play well like 3 or 4 weeks of the year, and the rest of the year they're just consistently kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
And I feel like Martinez kind of just gives them that extra boost of talent at the quarterback position. And I don't feel like Coach Klein up there is really, going to run the hell out of Adrian Martinez because I think he realizes that given his injury history, probably not the smartest thing to do, but I think we're going to see it regardless. But I feel like they could be one of those teams that people kind of, end up looking at going like, like you said, 5-6 games, and going, could this be the third best team? Could this be someone that OU should be afraid of, even though in years where they shouldn't have been, K-State beats them anyways. Right. But I mean, like, is this the year they actually should be worried?
Right.
Is this the year OSU should be worried? They kind of give me a lot of questions, and I feel like it would be kind of insulting to leave Texas off the list because if the unknowns work out, if Ewers is really as good as he was perceived to be going to Ohio State and transferring, if he's really that good, then we know that Sarkisian is just giving us lip service when he's talking about this quarterback competition is close. Because we heard that from Lincoln Riley for a couple of years when it was, Trevor Knight and Baker Mayfield. That conversation was, it's close. And then it was, Baker 100%. Like, no doubt about it. Now, Trevor did take some snaps, but, I mean, I don't think that quarterback competition was ever close.
Right.
And I think coaches do a good job of trying to, like, lead the media astray because I think deep down coaches do want that competition in practice to be like, I don't want this kid to think he's out of it because then he's just not going to try.
Right.
And then the kid next to him who thinks he's got it, might start slacking off a little bit.
Definitely.
You do want to keep those horses kind of neck and neck.
Definitely.
And I think that that's kind of what he's doing.
Yeah.
But I think by week 1, it's not going to be Hudson Card. I think you're looking at Quinn Ewers as being the starter. It's just whether or not is that going to work out.
Yeah.
Because we saw Casey Thompson not do bad last season.
Right.
It wasn't terrible. You lost to Kansas, but it wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, he didn't play terrible. The team as a whole played terrible, but I don't think he was really the problem.
Yeah.
And they've got weapons. I mean, we saw that last year in the Cotton Bowl. I mean, Xavier Worthy is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So they've still got...
Robertson.
Yeah, like, you still got guys on that roster, talent-wise, offensively, that scare the dickens out of me.
No, definitely.
Is Amario overshown? Is he going to be that defensive leader in that middle linebacker position, area where... I guess he's more of an outside linebacker. But, I mean, he made huge plays in the Cotton Bowl last year in that epic game. I don't know if that performance really trickled on to the rest of the season because I feel like Texas was kind of stunned and shell-shocked by the fact that even happened in the first place to kind of continue the season the way they had liked. So I think overall you're looking at a Texas team that could squeak into that 2 spot if everything goes their way. Yeah. But that just hasn't been the Texas way for the last 10 years. So I mean, we're not anticipating that being the case, but I feel like the top 3 as far as Baylor, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State, those are the ones you're going to be looking at as probably your go-to. let's hit a couple of the other Power Fives real quick. Pac-12, that one obviously is kind of top heavy as well. You've got USC, Washington, Oregon, and I mean a lot of people want to throw obviously Utah's at the top, but those are the teams. Those are the teams underneath. Utah scares me a little bit. Yeah. Okay, because without their starting quarterback, we saw how that second half went against Ohio State. I mean, they had Ohio State by the balls, and then quarterback gets hurt. Cameron Rising gets hurt, and
great game.
And Ohio State storms back, and Jackson Smith-Njigba has like one of the best games that you'll ever see from a wide receiver ever.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, crazy. And with Garrett Wilson being gone, and with Chris Olave being gone, he's the guy now.
Yeah.
And so he's going to have a good year, and C.J. Stroud obviously is going to be able to feed him the ball. Definitely. Point being, Utah without their quarterback is in trouble.
Definitely.
But they've got him. So for right now, I don't have a problem with where they've got him. So the AP has Utah up here at number 7.
Yeah.
And that means A&M's ranked higher than them. That means Notre Dame and Clemson are ranked higher than them. I kind of have a problem with that. Yeah. I'm going to be honest. Like, I don't really like that. Because first of all, Texas A&M is ass, okay? Yeah. Like I don't care if you've got Max Johnson coming in quarterbacking your team. I don't care if you've got another top 300, top of the class pocket passer as a freshman coming in this year as well. That's what they've got in the quarterback room. It's loaded. That's what they say. It's loaded. I don't feel like they're good enough to compete in the SEC right now. Yeah. The way they're going, I think this is overblown.
That Bama win.
I think so. I think so. And when you add the pieces that they added, it's kind of hard not to try to like pump them up a little bit. Yeah. But I think that when you're like a national expert and you haven't grown up in a culture where like, oh yeah, Texas A&M is part of the Big 12 and we used to like kick their ass every year, and they left for the SEC and we called them pussies, and we said have fun getting your ass kicked for like the next 30 years, and Johnny Manziel won that one game, and then beat OU, and it was like, oh my gosh, like maybe they made the right decision, and then it was like it just went downhill from there, and they kind of coasted, and it was decent for a little bit, but they've never been like world beaters. Like they've had games where they've beaten top teams, but they've never found themselves in a national championship because of that. Like it's never been like, oh, we beat the number 2 team in the country, and now we're not going to lose the rest of the season. Like no, like you'll beat Alabama, and then you'll go lose to Mississippi State, and we're sitting there going, what the hell? Like, it's just that's Texas A&M, and I think a lot of national experts don't see that, and I feel like they're just kind of putting a lot of stock in a product that just hasn't really proven itself to be top 10 worthy, and I feel like that's probably the biggest crime of this list is Utah being ranked below them.
They have a great recruiting class. I think that's why the rankers did put them so high. They had some of the most top recruits in the nation hit to them, so I feel like that's why they did get such a bump in the rank.
Yeah, and then you look at Notre Dame in front of them too. That's kind of an unknown. I mean, they've got a new coach. Yeah, it went semi well against OSU until you blew that lead. Right. But it gave the fan base kind of hope that you hung in with a team like that and kind of gave them a game and whatever. I mean, I guess if you want to take moral victories, yada yada. I mean, it's mid. Yeah. The season wasn't great for them. But you look at their schedule, and it's hard not to have them that high because of how easy that schedule is supposed to be. Sure, you're playing some ACC teams, and we'll know a lot about them early on because they're going to be playing a really tough team just right out the bat. Yeah. So we'll know how good they are, come week 2 and really be like, well, is that first game jitters? Is that first game, like we just didn't have everything, because you know how it goes. You start out the season and nothing's really smooth. Yeah. And then by the end of the year, it seems to be like a well-oiled machine. Like unless you have career-ending injuries to players that you would never have guessed. I mean, that's just how the progression is supposed to go through a football season, right? I mean, messy at first, tight in the end.
Right. That's what happens usually. Depending on the team, at least you'll start off rocky, and then your team will build chemistry throughout game 5, 6, 7, like a well-oiled machine. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of where I don't really have a problem, but I do with Notre Dame because like if you end up losing that game but then win the rest, you could still easily find yourself in that conversation for that 4th spot, right? Yeah. But I just feel like again, you're kind of putting a lot of stock into something you don't really have a lot of proof in really over the last couple of years. I mean, And every time they've been to the playoff, they got their butt kicked. So it's not really like you're giving a lot of people hope that even if they do well record-wise, that it's the right decision to put them in that game.
Right.
So, but at the same time, you are setting up Utah to climb the rankings anyways.
Yeah.
Because you are putting those teams that we feel like will probably fall off of there in front of them.
Yeah.
But it's just like, why waste the time? I mean, that's kind of the point I'm trying to get at, is why waste the time ranking these teams that high if we know they're probably going to fall off?
True.
I don't really have Pittsburgh 17, right? They're ranked above Wisconsin, Arkansas, Kentucky, Ole Miss, BYU, and a lot of that has to do with the quarterback position, right? You have Kenny Pickett leave, but you have Keaton Slovis transfer from USC over to Pitt. So that's the hole they're filling, is because when Caleb Williams said, I'm going to USC with Lincoln Riley, Slovis was like, I'm obviously not going to start, and was like, I got to go somewhere. And Pittsburgh was like, we ain't got nobody. Kenny Pickett was the guy. And I feel like he kind of fits that system a little better. How is he going to do with cold weather games and stuff will be kind of a different feel for him from someone that's been in Southern Cal for as long as he was. Right. Now, I don't know when he transferred onto campus, so he might have gotten a taste of that in the early spring. But there's nothing that will prepare you for traveling on the road somewhere where you're literally in, downpour snow somewhere in the middle of mid-October to early December. So we'll see how that goes. Do I feel like they're ranked properly? Probably not. I mean, it just because of the pieces other than the quarterback that they're kind of missing, right? I mean, it's not because that we don't feel like that position was adequately filled, because I was never really high on Kenny Pickett anyways. So I don't really feel like Keaton Slovis is like a downgrade. I feel like that's the right fit. Like, I feel like that puzzle piece fits there, and it doesn't sound weird to say that he's the quarterback there. I feel like that's a good fit. I don't know if they're worse than Miami. Miami's still got some question marks as well. New coach, obviously. The old Oregon coach, Mario Cristobal leaves my Ducks and goes down to Florida and tries to resurrect that abomination that has been the Miami Hurricanes for like the last 10 years. I mean, they just have not been relevant. I feel like he's recruited well, though. But I feel like this year will still be a struggle for him. I feel like the ACC is still kind of figuring itself out. When you have Wake Forest and who else was it? Wake Forest and Pitt playing in your conference championship game, and you're leaving out teams like Clemson, Miami, and North Carolina, Duke. Any of those teams that we've kind of seen in the past. I mean, it feels like the most up to grabs conference. Your thoughts on it?
It's definitely a weaker conference, but of course, I feel like it should be easy. Notre Dame's of course going to be first. I feel like it shouldn't change from the past years, but we'll see. It should be a good year.
Yeah, I agree. I can't say anything about that. We kind of talked about NC State a little bit, just because it was kind of a shock that they were at 13 after kind of the year they had last year, which was not a great year, but it wasn't a bad year either. 10 wins, never a bad thing for an NC State team. But are they better than where they ended last year, ranked 20th? They're like 7 spots better, maybe. But you're putting a lot of stock into Devin Leary, that quarterback. He had like 3 good games to end the season. And you're just kind of projecting that he's just going to keep on that trajectory. But from what we've heard from inside the program, it looks like he is going to be as good as advertised. So that could keep them in a lot of games, offensively at least. It's just going to be up to that defense to be whether or not they're better than a Pitt or a Miami or, a Clemson. Because, like we said, Clemson we think is kind of overrated as well. So as far as Pac-12 goes, we agree that it's probably Utah, USC, or Oregon, or Washington, kind of that top. The bottom 3 can kind of be interchanged. ACC, you kind of feel like it's Notre Dame, and then everybody else kind of after them is kind of a free-for-all. Is that your feeling on that?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's end this with a little game here. I've kind of put they put the betting odds for the first week of games.
Okay.
And so I'm going to give you a couple games here, and we'll go over this. And we'll see if we think like these spreads are going to be, as accurate as you think. If you would bet on these games. So first of all, let's touch on Northwestern and Nebraska. That's the one game that everybody's kind of been like, yeah, this is this is looking, like a decent matchup to watch on that first weekend of college football. And right now, it says the spread in that game is Nebraska minus 13. So Nebraska favored by a touchdown, 2 field goals. Your thoughts on that?
I feel like they're going to be a little more than that. I feel like they'll at least win by 2 touchdowns, at least for sure.
Yeah, you think this is going to be over for sure?
Yeah,
you're thinking this is going to be Nebraska wins by 20. So you would take that. Okay,
yeah,
so
definitely.
Okay, so there's that one. So Nebraska, you've got them minus 13 that first week. The second game is that Wyoming-Illinois game.
Yeah.
That's going to be... I have Illinois minus 10. So they expect it to be a close game.
Illinois winning by 10. Okay.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the Cowboys versus the Illini?
I feel like that's going to be definitely close for sure. Definitely at least by 10 or I feel like somewhere close, but I feel like Illinois definitely pulls it.
Do you think it'll be by less than 10 points? Or do you think it'll be by more than 10?
Probably less than 10
okay,
points.
So you're,
I got
so,
them by at least
so you're,
7 or 3.
So you would take Wyoming plus the point.
Yeah.
So Wyoming plus 10. Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
And then we'll end the show, and I'll give you this, and you can kind of pick 3 games that you really like, because this has the games that go on for week 1 as well. Okay. So we can kind of retouch on that next episode. But I think that, like, as far as right now, we got those 2 games. Let's just throw Vanderbilt and Hawaii in there. They have Vandy. This is supposed to be the closest game. They say Vandy minus 6.5. So they think both these teams are going to be pretty bad.
Neck and neck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Vandy still. I like their choice.
Okay,
Vandy.
you like Vandy minus. You think they'll beat them by at least a touchdown.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hawaii is always a vacation game.
Yeah. So Cole's picks right now, for those keeping score at home, are Vandy minus 6.5. He says more than 6. He says Illinois. He says Wyoming is going to at least stay within 10 points of Illinois. So he's taking Wyoming plus 10. And then he's taking Nebraska minus 13. And you know what? I don't disagree with any of those. I think that's spot on. So I'm going to go ahead and say ditto on that.
Yeah.
And then as far as closing this thing out, let's go ahead and kind of give people a preview of what's going to happen the first week of September. So, lots of games to choose from here. I'm gonna just go ahead and give you this.
Yeah.
You can kind of coast through the teams are kind of a little wonky. The board is good. The people who made this is pretty decent.
Oh yeah. First, you gotta get into that Oregon, Georgia for sure. Notre Dame, Ohio State will be a great one.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's when we'll know how good they are.
I like that Utah-Florida game. That should really, Florida not being ranked and Utah being where they're at, I feel like that should be a good tester for them as well.
Okay, give me 2 more.
The NC State, of course, East Carolina. We'll see really if NC State's that team that they're projecting to be for sure. And then, of course, I do want to see, even though it might be a blowout, and who knows, but what USC is going to do to Rice. Are they really going to put it on them and come out? Is Lincoln Riley really going to show his cards, like just beat teams up like that?
Okay. So let's start with this Oregon game, right? So you picked that as your first game here.
Yeah.
Where are they at? They're over here on this side. The Oregon State.
I think it's far right.
Far right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there it is. Georgia minus 18. That's the spread there. So they think Georgia's just gonna beat the dickens out of the Ducks by almost 3 touchdowns. Your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I'll give the Ducks a little better. I feel like Georgia's gonna win, even though you probably don't want to hear that. But
I'm not gonna fight it.
Yeah, I feel like Georgia's gonna pull it out for sure, but I don't think it's gonna be a blowout like we're thinking. I feel like I got them -12. I don't think that it's gonna be a 3 touchdown. Like it's gonna be 2 touchdowns, but they're not gonna put it on them like that.
Okay, so Cole's got Oregon plus 18. He thinks the Ducks are gonna hang in there. I think I'll agree with you on that. I think it'll be probably 2 scores maybe. I mean 10-14.
Yeah. That's
kind of where I see this game going. I feel like with all the unknowns on both sides of this matchup, I think that's
it's early too.
Yeah, it's early.
Yeah,
I think we could shock some people and hang in there a lot longer than people think we will. Notre Dame and Ohio State, that one is one that everyone's going to be watching for sure.
Oh, definitely.
Ohio State, though, favored by over 2 touchdowns, -15 for Ohio State. The over-under for this is 58.5.
Oh, wow.
So they think it's going to be high scoring. I think both teams are going to at least be close to 30, so like a 28, to 14 win here, something like that. I mean, or 28-42. They're looking at something crazy like that.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's on par? I mean, who you got in this one?
I got it a little closer. I definitely feel like Ohio State is going to pull out the win, but I definitely have it down with Notre Dame being a solid program and it being early as well. It's going to be a little rough on offense for both sides, and defense is going to be playing great. I definitely have Ohio State by at least 10, but I definitely feel like Notre Dame is going to be a little.
Well, not so fast, my friend, because I think that I think Ohio State beats the Tar. I think this is where we figure out that Notre Dame is kind of exactly who we think they're going to be, which is top of the ACC, but not on top of anybody else.
True.
Which I think will keep them around like the 7-8 range probably by the end of the season. I think it'll be enough to keep them out of the playoff discussion. Right. I think this is where Ohio State puts their foot down and says, yes, we're supposed to be number 2. Right. I think this is their coming out party. Now, you brought up a really good game that I didn't even think about, which was Utah and Florida. So let's get into that, because that's definitely one that I want to talk about for sure.
I like that one.
Let's see. Utah, definitely the favorite, but only by 2.5 points. They really think this is going to be a close game. So do you think that this is, exactly what is going to happen? You think Florida is going to hang in there?
I feel like Florida's going to surprise us in that game for sure. And with it, of course, still being early, I don't say offenses are going to score a crazy amount of points, but I feel like Utah still gives them a good game and pulls it out the win, but I feel like Florida's going to show us that they're not a team that is bad like that.
Yeah, so you think it's going to be within 3 points, or do you think that okay, you've got Florida plus the 2.5, so you think it's going to be 2.5 or even closer than that? I'm gonna stick with my Pac-12 guns and say that Utah wins this by at least 10. I think Florida's as bad as people think they're gonna be.
Yeah.
I think that's not gonna be a surprise for many people, but I think this is also, like you said, a good test for Utah, because if they do lose this game, then I think it'll expose the Pac-12 as more open-ended than previously thought before the season starts. So I like that matchup a lot, and I think that'll be one definitely to watch on that second Saturday of college football. Let's go ahead and hit on this NC State game, and then we've got the USC game after that. So NC State, they're going to be playing Eastern Carolina. They're favored by 10.5. Do you think that's about right? You think that's, based upon where they're at, 13th ranked team in the country going against an unranked?
I still got them winning, but I feel like they're going to surprise us. I think it's going to be a lot closer. It'd be even I feel like it might be a touchdown win. It's going to be real sloppy, and it's not going to be a lot of points on the board, and that's where I got them at.
Okay, so you like ECU plus the points here, and you know what? I kind of like it too, but I think it's just too soon. I think NC State falls off a little later, and I think they get it done. So I'm going to take them. I'm going to say they win it by like 2 touchdowns. Okay. I think what's going to happen is they'll be up 7 late, and I think they'll seal it in the last 4 minutes with another touchdown, and then I think ECU maybe turns it over, trying to force the issue too much with not a lot of time left. That's my guess.
Yeah.
We could both be terribly wrong. USC
ECU
and Rice. Let's see how much credit they give USC coming in this season. I mean, Rice obviously not been one of the best teams, notably of all time ever. USC minus 35.
Oh wow.
So they just think this is just going to be a cakewalk.
Yeah.
35. I mean, that's a lot. That's five touchdowns. That's 5 touchdowns. I mean, that's a lot of points. But is Rice that bad? I guess that's the real question. What are your thoughts? Do you think 35 is too much to give?
I'm excited to see. That's, of course, one of the reasons why I picked that being the last game. I want to see what Lincoln Riley's been doing in the offseason. I want to see if Caleb Williams is a Heisman guy that they're saying. So 5 touchdowns is what a Heisman quarterback would come in there and do, and he definitely would put up that throw for 4, run for 1, 2 rushings. We'll see. I like where it's sitting at right now.
Okay, so you like USC minus the points here. You think that's pretty accurate? Well, I like my Owls.
You like the Owls?
I like not to win the game, but I think that the question is how good is USC's defense?
Yeah.
And if USC's defense is as bad as people think it's gonna be, then sure they might win this game by 32.
Yeah.
They might win it by 33.
Yeah.
But I don't know if 5 touchdowns, if their defense is going to be able to close that gap. Because you know and I know.
Yeah.
Let's say they're up by 35 at halftime, right? You're feeling good. You're like, hey, covering the spread, looking good.
Yeah.
Caleb Williams comes out with the first drive for USC, punches it in, boom, up 42, you're feeling good. And then Lincoln Riley says, fine, I'm going to pull all my starters and put in my second-team defense and, maybe put in my backup quarterback to get some reps.
Yeah.
Do you think that could happen and open the door where Rice is like, oh, I'm going to cut this to 28 before the time is over, but Lincoln Riley's not sitting over here sweating? That's my thought. Now, you could be right, and they could just come out here and just beat the tar out of them 56-21, and we could be sitting here going, well, you're right, and no one's surprised.
Yeah.
But I think that if he coaches this correctly, and if Caleb Williams is that guy, if he is Heisman Trophy material, which a lot of people think he could be, then you should be on that position at halftime. 35 zip, like no scoring, 35 zip, 35-10, something comfortable where you're like, all right, Caleb, 2 more drives, and I'm pulling you, and we'll start thinking about it next week. I know coaches hate doing that. I know that Bob Stoops was notorious for just keeping starters in until literally 2 minutes left, and you're like, Bob, you're up by 40. Let some guys get some reps. But it was OU football, right? It's you have to step on their neck and not let them have their neck unstepped anytime, So that was kind of his mantra. I think Lincoln Riley kind of eased up a little bit on that and was like, 7 minutes left, maybe I'll pull my starters. He was kind of more open to it, I feel like, in the last couple of years. So I could see him pulling Caleb Williams aside and being like, all right, let's put in the backup. Let's get some reps. And Rice closes it to within 28 to 30 points. And we're sitting there going, Rice still got their butt kicked, but it wasn't by 35. Right. So I that's the only reason why I'm picking Rice plus 35. And what we'll do is I'll give you $100 of pretend money here, and you can tell me which games you would bet the most on. Okay. So Oregon and Georgia, you have both of us have Oregon plus 18. How much of that $100 are you wanting to bet on this game? How confident are you that you're going to be making money off of my Ducks covering?
We can throw a 10 on it.
Okay, he's throwing a tenner on there.
Yeah.
I've got to be a fan and at least throw 20 on there. So I'm already a fifth of my way through my money here. Notre Dame versus Ohio State. You've got Notre Dame covering the 15.
Yeah.
Confidence level here. You got $90 to play with. What are we looking at?
We can throw 15. I feel like Ohio State's definitely going to get it done.
So he's throwing 15 on there. I think I'll throw 15 on this too. I feel like that's probably the right amount out of that to throw on there. So you've got $75 to play with here. Utah and Florida. You've got Florida plus the 2.5.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like Florida might surprise us, with them being disrespected. Not really. They haven't been a great team, but I feel like they might take a little bit of disrespect. And I'm just gonna.
Okay. A little Abraham Lincoln action.
Yeah.
look, I'm not going to be cute about it. I think I'm going to put 25 on this one because I've only got 2 more games to bet on, and I feel like Utah, if they're going to be as good as I think they're going to be this year, a 2.5 point spread should be nothing. So yeah, I'm already over halfway through my money, but that's fine. I've only got 2 more games to bet on, and I'm probably least confident about this next one. NC State, Eastern Carolina. You got the Pirates covering the 10.5.
Yeah.
You seem pretty confident in that.
Yeah, we'll put 25 on.
Okay, you like your Pirates. I don't hate it because I think that, like you said, any team that wears purple and gold, I give them a shot, right? I mean, you throw some black in there, you got some of the best jerseys of all time.
Oh yeah.
They could be hype coming out here. I mean, it could be one of those games where ECU kind of shows that they're not to be effed with, and they take that one for a ride. Look, I'm sitting here at $60 gone here. I'll go ahead and put I'll put 30 on this game because I like NC State. I think that they could take care of business. I like them by 2 touchdowns, but this is kind of the biggest one we kind of disagree on as far as like point swings here. So, but we're both putting the most money out of any games on this one. So we're obviously putting our eggs in one basket. So the remainder of the money you're putting on this USC Rice game.
Oh yeah.
And you've got USC minus 35 coasting with the rest of this. So let's see, 25, 30, 55. You got $45 on the USC Trojans.
I like to put all the rest of my money on USC for sure.
35. 20, 60, 90. I got a tenner. I got a tenner on my Rice Owls, and I think that's probably the right amount to bet when you think you might be losing that money. Now, look, we made it. We're here. Episode 1 complete. We kind of touched on main topics. I had a nice time. I had a nice time. So we'll be back next week to kind of go over some of this stuff and kind of rehash some of the talking points, and I hope that you're gonna join us next week for all the shenanigans. Make sure you look us up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you get podcasts. We will have this posted. We're looking at probably every Friday for the remainder of this college football season of having to put these episodes out. So for Will Warner back here in the lovely space of the Murphy household, I bid you adieu. Cole, any last words for you, my friend?
No, sir. Just stay tuned. Should be fun.
We'll be back.